Larson. I'm the chair of the National Education Committee on Israel-Palestine here in Ottawa, Canada. And I'm thrilled to have with me Christopher Gunness, who is a spokesperson for UNRWA, the United Nations agency which is responsible for Palestinian refugees. Chris, welcome and thanks very much.
Thanks, Peter. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Chris, I just got, a number of people got a notice that there is a financial crisis at UNRWA. And I'd like, just give us a bit of the parameters of that. What does UNRWA mean by a financial crisis?
There is an unprecedented financial crisis in UNRWA, an agency which serves a population of as many as 5 million registered Palestine refugees around the Middle East, in Syria, in Jordan, in Gaza, the West Bank and Lebanon. The financial crisis we're now experiencing, to be precise, is a $101 million shortfall in the fund that pays for our education. So if we do not find $101 million in the next few days from the international donor community, we will be forced into a situation where we might have to delay the start of our school year for 500,000 children in the Arab states and territories around Israel, at a time when groups like ISIL are in full recruitment mode. And just to be clear, 240,000 of those children who we educate live in Gaza. So if we are forced to delay our school year, there may be as many as 240,000 children on the streets of Gaza, on the doorstep of Israel, at a time of rising anger about the lack of reconstruction and the blockade. That seems utterly catastrophic, which is why we are appealing to the international donor community to come forward with funds, particularly the government of Canada, which has defunded this organisation. In 2008-2009, Canada gave us $31.5 million. Today, Canadian contributions to UNRWA, $0.
Chris, I'm going to get to the question of Canada's contribution in a second, but what has precipitated this crisis? What's changed to make it a crisis?
Peter, it's a mixture of things. First of all, the number of refugees we serve goes up and up every year, because the children of refugees, as with all refugee situations, whether they're administered by the UN's other refugee agency, UNHCR, or by UNRWA, the children of refugees, while there's an unresolved political crisis, are themselves registered. So the number of refugees goes up. The situation they're in, their vulnerability, their need also goes up. So you've got the blockade in Gaza, which continues to increase food insecurity, unemployment, so people come to us for food and for cash and general assistance. You've got the Syrian civil war, now in its 5th year. We have 500,000 refugees there. So the situation they're in, a second factor, increased need, means that our bill goes up. And I think also we have to be realistic and say that the demand for overseas aid budgets, because of the Nepalese crisis, the crisis in Ukraine, the list goes on, the Palestinian issue is constantly relegated further and further down the list. And in previous years, UNRWA has been able to get money advanced by donors. We've used up our reserve. We've told creditors we can't pay them. We've done all those tricks this year, and we've now hit the wall. Starting in September, we will not have enough money to pay our teachers, and if this continues, not enough money in the bank, we will simply have to suspend the school year because we cannot pay our teachers.
Chris, why does UNRWA exist at all? Why doesn't it just fold itself into the other United Nations High Commission on Refugees? Why do you struggle to maintain an infrastructure and so on when it could be done by some other organization?
Well, that's a very, very good question, and the answer is in part historical. The General Assembly created UNRWA in 1949. We became operational in 1950, and that's before UNHCR was created through the 1951 Refugee Convention. And when the 51 Convention was created and adopted by the General Assembly, in the resolution, in the convention, it simply says, if you are already getting services from UNRWA, you're not covered by this convention. And that's because those who created the convention and those who voted for the convention thought that the Middle East crisis would soon be over and that there would be no need for UNRWA. So here we are, years later, 2 different organisations, but also make no mistake, even if UNRWA disappeared and the refugees were handed over to UNHCR, they'd still need schools, they'd still need health, there'd still be human beings with rights, which is why we say, in answer to your question, why does UNRWA exist? UNRWA exists because of political failure. We, according to all internationally accepted paradigms for resolving the process, the refugee issue, will go away once the refugee is resolved by the political parties in the context of a political solution. At that point, there will be no need for UNRWA. So what perpetuates UNRWA, and the reason why UNRWA exists, is because of the inability or unwilling of the parties to resolve the refugee issue. If the refugee were issued, UNRWA would go away.
Chris, there are in Canada a number of Palestinian refugees that have UNRWA cards, but they become Canadian citizens. They pay taxes. Why should they continue to get benefits from UNRWA?
They don't. Once you leave UNRWA's 5 fields of operation, Gaza, Syria, Lebanon, the West Bank, and Jordan, you're no longer eligible for our services. So once they go to Canada, there are no UNRWA offices in Canada where they can come and get whatever benefits they get. If they come back into the region, then and they qualify and they satisfy our demands that they should be needy, they should be below a certain income level, all of those things are satisfied, then they will get services. But while they're in Canada, they don't get UNRWA services.
Chris, our last question is, Canada used to contribute. Its contribution has been dropping, as I understand, over the last several years. And in fact, the last couple of years, Canada has not contributed anything. But Canada's contribution was in the neighborhood of $20 million. Would that make a difference?
It would make a huge difference. I mean, just to be clear, in the financial year 2008-2009, overall Canadian contributions to UNRWA were $31.5 million. Now, if Canada would be prepared to give us that, that would cover over a third of the present crisis we're in, because our financial shortfall is 101 million, and if Canada were prepared to come forward and do what they did in 2008-2009, then we would make a huge dent on our deficit. So we appeal to the Canadian government. You know, when you look at what UNRWA was doing last summer in Gaza, we led the international response to the conflict in Gaza. Our teachers, our aid workers, our relief workers, they were running 90 schools for 300,000 displaced people. Now, not a single Canadian taxpayer's dollar went into that relief effort. What a shame that a once very proud nation that supported UNRWA and its extraordinarily courageous work. What a shame that Canada, that nation, has gone from giving so generously to some of the most disadvantaged people in the world, the Palestine refugees, certainly some of the most disadvantaged people in this very unstable region, to nothing. That's what's happened. Canada, a once proud aid-giving nation to Palestine refugees, has gone from 31.5 million to 0. And that's a great shame. And I think a lot of Canadian people hearing this will want to know from their government, why did it happen? And by the way, it wasn't planned. We discovered that Canada was going to defund us, a major donor, when the cheque didn't arrive in the post. There was no preparation. I mean, good donorship is all about a relationship between, your government and the agencies which you're funding. We found out because the cheque didn't arrive in the post. But, we want to put all of that behind us. We want to have a good and creative and productive relationship with the Canadian government. Other donors are stepping up to the plate. The Americans, big donors to UNRWA and increasing, the Europeans, the Saudis, other European nations are really stepping up to the plate. And we say, why isn't Canada there?
Chris Gunness, we hope that this question will be addressed more seriously in political levels in Canada. We're having an election, as you know. We'll see what the complexion of the new government is and what its attitude is toward the Palestinians and towards UNRWA. Thank you for your work, and with your permission, I'll check in with you again in the future once your financial situation is resolved.
Please do, and thank you very much for being part of that public discourse in Canada and for having these questions raised, because they're very, very important. And I look forward to hearing some of the answers from you, Peter. Best wishes to you and all of your audience.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
And you.